Well, I don't know whether you've noticed the title of the lesson I want to look at this morning is A Pilgrim's Progress. When I say the word pilgrim, what do you think about? What? Our early settlers, you know, the black outfit, the black suit, the top hat, the white bib. That's what we think of. I asked Peggy that, and she said, well, what about the Canterbury Tales? They were on a pilgrimage. They were on their way. And that gets at the meaning of the word pilgrim. A pilgrim is not just a stranger in a strange land, but he's also, and she is a person who is traveling somewhere. You know, I'm going to need that mic, I bet you, because I'm going to be away from this, and I forgot to do that. But at any rate, a pilgrim is really someone on a spiritual journey. And for a few minutes, we want to look in chapter 9 of the book of John, the Gospel of John, and is the story of the blind man. The blind man, now Jesus healed a number of blind men, but one of them was this one in John 9, where he daubed clay on his eyes. You remember that one? And he went and washed in the pool of Siloam. Well, Jesus gets down to the very end of that story, and he makes a statement to the blind man here in this situation. Let me just stop a minute. I don't know where I'm going to put it. Thank you. And Jesus gets down to the end of it after all of the events of the story. And in verse 39, he says this, "For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not might see, and they which see might not see." Now that's a rather strange thing when you think about Jesus as the light of the world, that he's coming here and that some when the light comes to them, they're blind and they go blind. How strange that is, that the light of the world would bring light to some and darkness to others. But that's what he says. It's a startling truth, and it's illustrated in this story here. You know, the difference is that the same heavenly winds are blowing on both sets of people. But it's the set of the sail of the soul that makes the difference. And some have set their sail toward darkness, and some have set their sail toward light. And it's the story of this blind man that tells us the difference and the contrast between the two and what puts us in either one of those camps. And so we're going to look at this journey where this man begins, and where some go to darkness, this man goes to a veritable certainty of life and certainty of sight. So let's look at this man as he makes this pilgrimage and this spiritual journey. There are three views we get of him as he begins. The first view is that of his neighbors. When his neighbors see him, they said, "Is not this the same man that sat and begged? He's just a beggar. He's a parasite. He's useless. That's all he is." And that's all they saw. Did he ever dream? Did he ever pray? Did he ever weep? Not as far as they were concerned. They never asked those questions. They never came to know that. He just sat and begged. Nothing more. There's another view from the disciples, the friends of Jesus. When they walk by and they see this man, you remember what they said? "Lord, who hath sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind?" What is it to them? What is this man? What's their view of him? Well, they didn't ask for a cure. They didn't ask how could he be changed from a liability to an asset. That wasn't on their minds at all. They had no hope for him. What he was in their scheme of things was that he was a starting point for a theological discussion. We're going to talk about what God does and doesn't do and why He does it and Why is this man where he is? And that's all. They were ready for an autopsy. Not with any idea of restoring life. Just going to discover the cause of why this man is born blind. The third person to see him, or the third view of this man is, and Jesus, passing by, he saw a man. He saw a man with great possibilities. As Jesus passed by, he saw one possessed of most amazing possibilities. Great courage. We're going to see that. Beautiful loyalty. A man worth going to Calvary for to redeem him. One who suffered, but his suffering was not born of sin, but was that he might be enriched beyond measure. Think about it. A whole life like that. What he had suffered as loss was going to be a great gain for him. His handicap was going to be his help. His darkness was soon to become, through the riches of grace, a gateway to an everlasting dawn. Think of that. So how did he begin this journey? Well, the first move was made by Jesus, wasn't it? That's always the way it is. We're always sought before we become seekers. We're always the pursued before we pursue Him who died for us. It's the first step to recovery is taken by Jesus to find the lamb, the shepherd to find the lamb that's gone astray. And that's the way it works. How does He do it? Well, it's that heart hunger that is in the heart of mankind. Something of a restlessness. Someone looks at his life and he says, what I'm putting my life to, surely there's more to it than this. It's got to be more than just what I'm doing. And so we're looking for something, an undefined want, a conviction of something that's of a higher purpose. That's the essential. That's what it is for us. All indications are that the Good Shepherd is after the sheep that was lost. And so he saw possibilities in this man. And so he says to him, he says, stand up. And he makes a clay and spits in it and makes a spittle and he wipes it on both of his eyes. He says, now you go and wash in the pool of Siloam. And when you do, you're going to see. You're going to have sight. You'll no longer be blind. Now, we're not told exactly why or how he did this. There's no power in the clay. You and I are well aware of that. For sure, we know that he healed others. You remember blind Bartimaeus on the road to Jericho? Bartimaeus says, Master, Master. And they said, you be quiet. He said, I'm blind. I got to go see him. He said, no, you be quiet. The master's busy. And so the master calls for him. When he comes, when he says, what do you want to do? He said, I want to see. The Lord said, according to your faith, so be it unto you. And he goes seeing. That's the way he did that one. But they're not all the same. You remember the other blind man? That he rubbed his eyes. He didn't just speak to him. He didn't put a clay on his eyes. He just spoke to him. And he said, now. No, he rubbed his eyes and he said, now. What do you see? He said, I see men walking as trees. So I don't know why Jesus did it this way. He rubbed it again. He said, now I see clearly. I see clearly. So he didn't do it the same with both. So we know it's not in the clay. It's not in the pool of water. Something else is in. Not everything's to be explained. You know, when this man was asked to remove himself, could it have been that this man just needed some tangible act? I don't know. Maybe it was Jesus wanted to remove himself from this situation and let this man have that sight and reach its impact with those around him and the Pharisees? I don't know. I don't know why he did it this way. But the thing about it is the man's reaction. What did he do? What did the blind man do? He got up and began to peg his way to the pool of Siloam to wash his eyes and to see. You know, we encounter the man down the road and we see him. Hey, why you got that? What's wrong with your eyes? Well, some man daubed clay on my eyes. Why did he do that? He said if I would put the clay on my eyes and go to the pool of Siloam and wash, I would see. We say, you're a fool. You believe that? Do you think that's going to do it? The man said, no, I would be a fool if I didn't go, because I'll be just as blind if it doesn't work as I am now. And I may see. And so I'm speechless. What can I say? And so he turns and he begins his journey further to the pool of Siloam to wash so that he might see. And he goes. Can you imagine? And the dawn bursts upon him. And he sees. Now, the next stage of this journey, it's a spiritual journey, not just the physical journey to sight, but it's a journey for his spiritual life too. The next stage of this, he's in bitter opposition. He finds himself in bitter opposition by those who really can see. Those who can see are the very ones who oppose him. Watch this man. Watch this man. He's loyal to what he has, to the light that he has. He doesn't claim to know more than the facts will guarantee him. He's true to the oracle. He stands by that truth, and as he understands it, and he will do it at all costs. Now, isn't that the kind of faith that Jesus wants us to have? That we'll commit to him completely, no matter what the cost, no matter what it takes out of us. We'll put our trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding, but in all our ways acknowledge him. And so, it's inevitable. Everybody hears about it. All the neighbors know. So they grab this blind man, once blind man, and they carry him down to see the Pharisees. Let's see the spiritually. What are they going to say? What can they make out of this? How do they understand it? And here, there's a sharp contrast between the seeing and the blind. Between this man and these Pharisees. For one, the day grows brighter, and for the other, the sun begins to set. That's a great sadness. But it was eternal and costly. You know, when the Pharisees heard it, they questioned the validity of the miracle. Now, that's not bad. You know, there are a lot of people tell me about miracles, and I don't believe that miracle. They tell me some story, and I just don't believe it, and I'd like to investigate it more. These people had a perfect right. These Pharisees did. And not because they investigated was this problem. Christianity is not a religion of credulity. You're not just expected to accept everything just completely as is, whatever story you hear. Isaiah said in Isaiah 1 and verse 8, "Come, let us reason together." It's always been with God that we reason with him to understand, that we serve him with our mind and soul and body. That's the way it is with Christianity. When Paul stood on Mars Hill, there were the thinkers of the day. There were the philosophers of the day. And he said, we ought not to think like you're thinking. There's something wrong with your thinking. Let me tell you how you ought to think. We ought not think of the Godhead as of gold, silver, or anything graven by art and man's device. You see, God is a creator. He's not some stone. So Christianity doesn't ask us to simply accept without reason. We have good cause to believe what we believe. So what's wrong with the investigation that they're doing? It was not honest. It was not honest from the get-go. Look at verse 22 in this story in John 9. For the Jews had already agreed among themselves that if anyone confessed that Jesus was the Christ, they would be put out of the synagogue. Now that was their conclusion already. And when they bring this man in and they say, Jesus is the one that healed his eyes, what do you make of that? They cannot accept that. And they will not accept it because they're not honest. And they've already got an answer. It's bad when people already have answers and are not willing to reason together from the Scriptures. That's not true with this man. That's not true. And so, it's a damning course to simply reject truth. The Apostle Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, I believe it is, about verse 8 or 9, God will send them strong delusion that they should believe a lie and be damned. It's a damning course to reject the truth. Make no mistake about that. And this man was not going to do that. But these Pharisees would. These Pharisees would. Because the reason is they love not the truth, Paul said. And that was the trouble with the Pharisees. They were dishonest. The investigation was to prove what they already believed. So let's look at the story and the investigation itself. How'd they conduct that? Well, they bring him in. Tell us the story. Tell us how this all came to be. He tells them. Well, they can't find any flaws in that. No reason to that. So they ask him, well, then what is your opinion of this man? Well, he's a prophet. Oh, now that sets them off. They got something to argue about. He's no prophet. So then they say, well, you were never blind. That was the problem. You were just never blind. So they call his parents in. Now his parents, they haven't had his experience. And they don't have the courage that he has either. And so when they go in, they say, well, was this your son? Yes, this is my son. Was he born blind? Yes, he was born blind. Well, how did he get like this? Well, I don't know that. Now, they did know. They'd heard that too. They already knew he'd been to the pool of Siloam, and this man had told him that to go and wash his eyes and see. They knew that, but they didn't want to tell him. Because they'd have to say Jesus told him, and they knew, and the record says in that verse that that's their response, that the reason they answered like this, well, ask him. He's of age. Ask him. Because, the record says, they said that because the Jews had already agreed that they would be cast out of the synagogue. They were not as courageous. They did not want to be cast out of the synagogue. So, and the blind man, they ask him to talk. And he speaks very emphatically. They say, how did it happen? He said, well, I washed in the pool and I came seeing. And he says, I know that. I can understand that. But they're just unbelieving. They're not convinced. They're bitter against his will. They say, give God the praise. It's not that man. He has nothing to... Give God the praise. They cannot deny the miracle. When they say give God the praise, they've accepted the miracle, haven't they? But they haven't accepted Jesus. They still refuse to believe that he is the Messiah. And they've told everybody, you can't accept that. And they're bitter about it. And they're mad about it. This man is very courageous. He will not do this. What effect did this conviction of the Pharisees have? Didn't accept Jesus. what they decided to do was give this absurd order. Give God the praise, for we know that this man is a sinner. Now, this once blind man, he sees right through them, and he laughs at them. Whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. But he's true to the facts. He said, I know this. He put the clay on my eyes. I went to the pool. I washed, and I can see you. And they knew it. They knew it. And so, he kind of laughs at them. He said, I was blind, now I see. So they make one more effort. They say, well, just tell us again how it was done. Now, he'd already told them 3 times. Tell us again, how did he do this with this spittle in the pool at Siloam? And tell us that story again. And he sees that they're not seeking the truth. They just simply want to discredit Jesus. That's all they're after. And so he answers with a little bit of amazing sarcasm, doesn't he? Why, what do you mean? Are you seeking the light? Do you want to see? Is that what you're really after? Are you going to be his disciple? He's already seen through them. They've got nothing to answer him except abuse and excommunication, and they tell him, you just out, and you can't come in here anymore. You're anathema to God, they think. He gives one final parting shot at him. If this man is not of God, he could do nothing. I know this. You know it. And hard as you try to reject it, you can see it. And so the final stage of this man's spiritual journey is that he makes arrival at a certain point. It's not his final goal, beyond which there's no progress. It's rather a place of certainty where there is endless progress to follow. Don't you hope someday to see, after you've seen Jesus, after you've seen Paul, after you've seen Mary, don't you want to see this blind man and talk to him? I hope I get that privilege someday, the eternal day. And so he's at a point of spiritual certainty, but he's not there yet. Look at it. He's excommunicated. He's cast out. He's suffered all these years as blind. Jesus hears about him. Jesus hears, well, you know, he's been cast out. So I'll find him because I know him. He said, this is my friend. I know he's been loyal. I know he's been loyal to the truth that he knows. And he said, what I want to do is I now want to enroll him in the eternal kingdom. That's what I'm going to do. So he searches him out. And he finds the blind man. And he asks him the great question. One you're asked. One I'm asked. One all mankind is asked. Do you believe in the Son of God? No greater question for you or me. Now, he gives a superb answer. It's not, Lord, I believe. No. He's too honest for that. He's too sincere for that. He knows some man put clay on his eyes and he could see. Whether he was the Son of God or not, I don't have that fact. And so he says, who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? Because he's willing. He'll stand by the truth. He will die for it. He's already demonstrated that. But he will not claim a faith he does not possess. So who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? Notice that. There are no conditions. There are no reservations. You know, if he asks me to go to the cross, I'll go to the cross. Whatever it is, just let me know who he is, and I believe, and I'll follow him. Now that's this courageous man. For such a one, Christ can reveal himself. And so he says, you've seen him, and he it is that stands with you and speaks to you now. And this valiant man falls down on his knees, and he says, Lord, I believe. He's willing to trust him. He had reached this broad spiritual daylight. It was more thrilling than the physical dawn he'd witnessed just hours before. This once blind man, the light that in Jesus has illuminated him. Isn't it sad? It has only blinded the eyes of the Pharisees. The Apostle Paul said in 2 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter, in verse 16, something about the gospel of Jesus Christ. The story of the gospel that this man saw and knew. He says this, it's both perilous and saving. It's both priceless and perilous. Listen to him. The gospel is the savor of life unto life. That's the blind man. And it's the savor of death unto death. And that's the Pharisees. They denied the truth that was right in front of them. The light that had shined into the darkness of their lives had come, and they rejected it and blinded themselves. No more deaf is the man who will not hear. No more blind is the man who will not see. To refuse to see, to refuse that, is to lose our capacity for sight. We know the truth, and to refuse to obey it, what does it do for us? It'll give you and me the guilt of sin for which there is no forgiveness in this life nor in the life to come. To reject the message, to hear it, see it, and deny it is eternal destruction and damnation. And that's why Jesus said in the verse we read as our text, if you, for judgment am I come into the world, that the seeing might not see, and that the ones who do not see can see. One time Jesus looked over Jerusalem, Luke 19 and verse 44, and the denial of truth was brought from him this heartbreaking cry. When he looked at Jerusalem and those Jews and those Pharisees and the ones who were going to take him to the cross and deny that he was the Son of God. If you had known, even you, at least in your day, the things which belong to your peace. But now they are hid from your eyes. They shall not leave one stone upon another, because you knew not the day of your visitation. Do you know the day of your visitation? Have you seen the truth? Have you accepted it? Do you believe it? Do I believe it? Am I committed to it? Am I as courageous as this man? Truly, for judgment is Jesus coming to the world, that those who see not might see, but that those who are seeing might not see, because they reject the truth of the gospel of the eternal God. If you're subject to that invitation to come to Him, won't you come as we stand and sing?